Hello everyone, and welcome to the Houdini Technical Director Series, Volume 1, DVD, with your lead instructor, Mr. Steve Twist.
Hey.
Hey Steve, how's it going today?
Pretty good, thank you. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. And secondary instructor and student, Mr. Jason Busby. So what exactly does secondary instructor mean? Simple. That means I'm like the instructor that's in the back of the room listening to the lecture that's being presented by the lead instructor, and from time to time, if I can think of other perspectives to present a lecture from, I'll jump in and add my thoughts in, and that just helps make the lecture just a little bit more clear. Now, what does it mean when I say I'm playing the role of a student? I'm going to listen very carefully to everything that Steve says, and if from time to time he happens to get onto a particular topic that gets a little bit fuzzy, and in my mind, if I'm able to envision a beginner to the world of Houdini getting a bit confused, I'll jump in there with questions as if I was a student, or a secondary perspective if I want to play the role of secondary instructor. I will also be assisting in a bit of the whiteboarding for a lot of the theory through this volume. So Volume 1 and Volume 2 will consist of the construction of a complete animated short project inside of Houdini 9.5. Steve, if you want to take just a second and pull up InPlay, show them the final animated project that we will be creating.
So yeah, here is our final animated project, and before I click play, I do want to point out we are currently obviously recording on this machine, and that's going to result in some of our processing power being eaten up, so this is going to play back a little bit choppy, but on the whole, it's fairly smooth.
So the goal is to have a procedurally generated crowd in a stadium that's all excited, and then suddenly they're going to calm down as our talented ball comes to life. He bounces forward towards a ladder, climbs the ladder up to the top. He is being tracked by two main spotlights, bounces out onto the diving board, does a few bounces to get higher and higher into the air, and then finally an amazing backflip, and down. The crowd gets very excited. Unfortunately, there is no liquid in the pool, and he falls to his demise. At least that's what we'll assume happened.
Yeah, it can't have been a good outcome.
No, but the idea of Volume 1 and Volume 2 is to reconstruct this entire project. But what we're wanting to do is reconstruct it from the point of view of a technical director. Now, what does that mean? Simple. Instead of an artist approach where we would begin with simply modeling out our different objects, in this case model out a stadium with its different benches, etc., modeling out a stage and then putting some spheres in and creating a shader and applying the shaders, we're going to break everything down into a series of digital assets. These digital assets can be easily reused in other projects. Everything is going to be procedural, meaning that our crowd will be able to go in there and say this stadium is going to have X number of rows, X number of columns. We'll have full control over our audience, the distribution of the audience throughout the stadium. We're even going to demonstrate at the very end how we can take a digital asset that's complete and go in and answer requests from an artist to add new functionality in, and we'll make it such that we can pump new information into this digital asset for controlling physically placed characters throughout the stadium on top of the procedurally generated crowd. I was looking for the best way to say that, so it didn't sound confusing. Basically, we're going to come up with a digital asset that will distribute characters throughout our stadium, but an artist is going to come in with a request saying, hey, I really like the distribution pattern that I have here, but I would like to be able to add a character here, here, and here. So we're going to show you how we can go back in and make these modifications to make our artist happy. But, from that, we have our crowd, we've got our ladder, completely procedural, how many rungs, the kind of spacing, how tall it is, etc. Our character, even our character will have a very simple rig on it so that when an artist begins animating the character, it'll be very easy to work with squash, stretch, bend, etc. The goal of this project, though, is to not only teach how to put all of these digital assets together, but to also talk about all of the expressions that are going to be required to give the procedural nature that we're looking for all of these digital assets. And then as we progress into Volume 2, we're going to take a very close look at professional level rendering. Of course, the animation process, the lighting process, all of that is not extremely complex things that need to be done in this particular project, but we are going to demonstrate how we can take this project and break it down into approximately 80 different render passes that we can then turn around in a compositor, the Houdini built-in compositor, bring all of those render passes back together and set it up in such a way that an artist would have complete control over everything. So if anything needed to be changed, nothing would require re-rendering. But to pull this off, with dealing with that many render passes, we're going to have to get into some Python scripting, and we're going to have to get into the construction of some digital assets over inside of the compositing world. So that's going to be some really good stuff, but that's coming up in Volume 2. Once again, in this particular volume, we're going to start out in the next video by first looking at the storyboards, talking about what digital assets we need to create, and then we're going to spend the rest of this volume creating all of those digital assets, including some custom shaders as well. Steve, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Not right at this point.
Okay.
No.
Well, I would just like to take a second and thank you for all of the hard work that you've put into researching and developing this project. You've done an amazing job. We actually met about a year ago, first discussing the Houdini Fundamentals project, and at that time you became the director of Houdini Education at 3D Buzz, and you decided to tackle this thing, and you did an excellent job because it started out with just the bouncing ball, but then I was like, it'd be great if there was a crowd. And I still remember you thinking, what? Wait, this is an introduction. Yep. And then going from there into, it would be great if the crowd's shader was all procedurally calculated and randomly distributed throughout the crowd. And you were once again saying, wait a minute, this is an introduction to Houdini. But you've done an amazing job at keeping everything, I won't say simple, because for someone that has absolutely no clue, this may come across as some very complex material. But in the end, the presentation of everything throughout this first DVD is going to appear very simple as long as our viewers have gone through the basic Houdini fundamental videos that we have put out. So that amazes me. You've done an absolutely outstanding job.
Thank you.
So with that, I guess it is now time for us to jump over into the next video and kick this project off. Thanks a lot, everyone.